Hey guys, it's really important that your power valves are working perfectly. So in this video, we're going to show you how to do just that. I'm going to try to show you how to service all three power valves right in the bike. So this is what we're looking at to start with. First order of business is to get a old school impact driver that you hit with a hammer. Get a proper JIS or Phillips bit in it, and with an extension you can get right to those and pop the two of them loose and take them out. With the screws removed, you should be able to take this secondary linkage right out. Now we need to take out those shouldered Allen cap screws. Those are Loctited from the factory, so they're a little stiff, but they come right out. These steps are for the more advanced mechanic because you will be able to drop things down into the combustion chamber and do some damage. So now we're just going to remove that valve holder plate. Now I'm going to just slide the power valve, center valve, right out. Try to do it so you can see. It just comes right out. The secondary linkage and the power valve, the little plate on it, they were stuck. So just needed a little bit of coaxing to pop them free, and they come right out. You can see the piston right through that center power valve bore. So I'm going to leave it right there. That'll keep anything from going down in. Not that anything will. Now you're going to remove the two JIS screws from the valve cover. There's one on each side, of course, for both of the secondary valves. Now you're going to take off the valve cover, give it a little twist. It's sealed with an O-ring, and pop it off. I'm only going to do the one side with the camera, but same thing on both sides. The other side has the breather tube, otherwise it's no different. Now, because the secondary linkage is removed, I can take my hooked pick and just reach in the slot in the valve, grab its pin, and pull it right out. Now, with all three of the power valves out, you want to clean these bores really well. So make yourself a giant Q-tip or whatever to something that's not going to come apart. Give it a shot of degreaser or your brake cleaner, whatever you like to use, and clean these bores real well. They'll dissolve any carbon or varnish, and just take your time, clean them really well. Get a good light, and they will come right nice and clean. Bring everything you took out of the cylinder over to a bench and clean everything really well. I use a degreaser, but all this stuff should come nice and clean. You'll have some permanent staining on some of the things, but that's fine. So clean everything up really well. And this is really all there is to it. This is a good perspective to see how this linkage engages these secondaries. You've got the linkage has an arm with a fork on the end and a pin pressed through the secondary valve, so that fork just slides in the slot and straddles that pin. You can't miss too far inboard because it forces it to the correct position. You can, however, miss from too far outside, but that's obvious. You can see right in through the end cap that's sticking out. So it's obvious when they're engaged correctly. So clean all this stuff up really well. Get these valves, you know, all looking good. And while it's apart, check out this linkage. Sometimes you'll have quite a flat spot worn off on these pins, and that's not great. Usually at that point, they're clapped out and there's a lot of play in the pivots. So if they're trashed, get a new one. I think it's 60 bucks, maybe 80 bucks now. And that's all there is to it. Now let's go put them in the bike. Now with a little bit of the two-stroke oil and a little paintbrush, you can lube up the bores, take your nice shiny new looking valves, give them a coating of oil too. I grab my hooked pick and I grab the little pin inside the valve so you can shut it, pull it open, push it shut, pull it open, push it shut. Just make sure it's moving nice and silky smooth. Then before you take the pick out, you want to rotate the valve so that the big cut in it, the slot, is right nicely in line with that chamber that the secondary linkage goes down through. So you can see right on the side of the engine, the chamber, line it right up with the slot in the valve. I do it with the valves closed at this point. So same thing with the center valve, get it all cleaned up, polished up. The little stopper plate is ambidextrous, doesn't matter which way it goes. The fingernail cutout, that is important. That indicates that that surface goes up. So paint the bore, paint this stuff up with two-stroke oil or your preference. And then I'll try to do all this left-handed. Okay, so then the valve goes in, and that little stopper plate, you need to kind of line it up and snap it into place. New ones, yep, there. So that snapped in that little recessed spot to receive it. So make sure it's down in that little recessed receiving spot for it. And now all the valves are in. So now the Allen screws got a little dab of Loctite, and those are in and tight. So the center valve is done. So now we're going to put this in. You're just going to see a lot of beat up old overexposed hands, but this is the trickiest part. It just takes a little persistence and patience to feel it going in and in the valves. And these went right in. There is a little dimples and spot to receive them, so you know when it's in there and proper. The thing you do want to check is that the valves are hooked to the linkage. So here you can look right in the sides at those secondaries. Make sure those forks are over the pin that's pressed through that valve. And then I'll just hold the linkage with my finger, and then I'm going to try to move these valve with the linkage with my finger in the PV box. So I can see that's all as it's supposed to be. Check the other side. If something isn't set perfect over the pin, that fork, then just going to have to back off the one side or both and do it again. A little patience and persistence, and it's not a big deal. Now that you've confirmed that the linkage forks have engaged the secondary valve pins properly and everything is moving well, the linkage itself is seated, the dimples seated in the little alignment holes, then you can just put in those serrated shouldered Allen cap screws that come in the kit. Put those in. you know, if you ever need to, or the next owner will thank you. There, now the two screws that come in the kit got a little dab of Loctite, and they're in and tight, holding the secondary linkage. So all four Allen screws are Loctited and tight, and that finishes everything inside the PV box. Now we're just going to throw on the valve covers on the sides, and that'll be it. Grease up the little O-ring on the valve cover and just kind of carefully twist it and push it into place. Zip the screws back in. So everything's clean and working silky smooth.